A new study published 3 hours ago in the journal Translational Psychiatry, which says that exposing youngsters to tackle football before the age of 12 increases the risk of neurobehavioral problems in later life, specifically a twofold increase in regulating behavior, apathy, and also what's called executive functioning, and a threefold increase in elevated depression. That's, of course, compared to players who began playing after the age of 12. And among the authors of this study, Dr. Robert Stern of the Boston University CTE Center. Dr. Stern, how many players did you study and how were they selected?
There were 214 former players. Around half of them only played up through college. Around 20% only played up through high school. And then the remaining were former pros. And they were all part of our Legend study here at BU, which is a longitudinal study of a whole lot of different athletes across different levels of play, trying to figure out the relationship between getting your head hit and later life problems.
So, been a lot of questions about that 12-year-old cutoff. Why is it important medically? Why 12 a dividing point?
Yeah, it's important to know that there's no magic number. It's not like 12 and a half is safe and 11 and a half is not safe. It's based on previous research of brain development, looking at the anatomy of the brain and how the brain grows. And there's this period between the ages of around 10 and 12 where the brain is going through this incredible maturation and growth. And so the idea is that if you hit your head repeatedly during that really important time period, it may have later life problems. It also falls on the heels of previous research from our group looking at just former NFL players, where we found that the guys who started playing before age 12 had significantly worse memory and executive functioning problems later in life, as well as another study where we found changes in the actual structures of the brain, of the connections between the hemispheres.
You mentioned the prior NFL study. I'm sure you're aware there were those other folks in the field who had criticisms of the methodology, or at least they said they couldn't replicate the findings. To those who criticize the fact that it's not a randomly selected group of players or that the findings may not be able to be replicated, what would you say? Well,
you know, I don't like criticizing colleagues. All we can do is try to do our best science. I can just tell you that that other study was done by a bunch of people who were directly affiliated with the NFL, and that study actually came from a defunct study that the NFL had been doing through their mild traumatic brain injury program years ago, and that, as you know, was stopped prematurely, and the study never went forward. So they brought the data from that study and they looked at it, but in that study they actually had very few people who played before high school. And yet they were talking about what happens if you start playing in youth. But most importantly, they raised some important possible limitations to our previous work, and so we addressed all those with this current study. We kind of dealt with all of the potential criticisms.
In a quick phrase, what should the science of what you've been able to study in the last several years say to a football parent?
Well, you know, no single study can lead to policy change or rules change. It's when there's more and more data that keep coming up for parents to start making their own decisions about what makes sense. This study doesn't say this is it.
Looking
it just
at
means
all the various
parents
sides.
have to think about is it a good
Dr. Bob Stern, appreciate your time.
Good thing to
Yeah, I wish we had more time.
All right.
We did ask USA Football to provide a comment today. They deferred us to their medical advisory board, and they have yet to provide us a statement. Our thanks to Dr. Robert Stern of Boston University. Dive deeper online with Mark Fina-Ruwada's online reporting of the impact of tackle football before the age of 12.